Hello, this is Piyush Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Hansraj College, University of Delhi, welcoming you all to Hansraj e-Samvaad Center, where we deliver specialized and research teaching content for students and scholars for their exams. I welcome you all to Hansraj e-Samvaad yet again. Today we'll discuss the autobiographical novel Karukku by the acclaimed teacher and teacher activist Bama Faustina. The book Karukku, published in 1992, was Bama's autobiography. And in this autobiography, she describes her experiences as a member of the lower castes. And the story is not just about her, but her entire community. So, therefore, what begins as an autobiography later takes the shape of a testimonial. It is a short excerpt from her autobiography that is a part of your syllabus. And in this autobiography, Bama firstly describes her life from her young age till her adulthood in the entire book and how she fought the discriminations of castes. In this short little excerpt, which is there in your syllabus, we are described the point of view of a girl who was perhaps in her 8th class, a young girl, a young kid. And as the excerpt begins, we see that she was in the 8th class and she used to go and work for the members of the upper castes. She even mentions how whenever they used to come, Bama and her community members used to step aside and they stayed away from the members of the higher caste for the fear of polluting the members of the higher caste. Then she goes on in this excerpt to, she goes to class 10th, and when she finished her exams and she went back to her home, then as the story goes forward, she goes on describing the various hardships that Dalits had to go through, at a day-to-day basis, at that point of time. And she believed in this false idea that the members of her community, they were really strong, they had a lot of strength because they used to work day and night. So she believed that they are so hardworking that very soon they will be able to do well in their lives because of the amount of physical pain and the physical pressure that they go through. But then very soon she realizes as she grows up that they will not be able to do so because no opportunities are given to them, right? Then she also describes how there has been an issue of equal pay between men and women. The men, they used to receive more work, and they used to get more money, and the women used to receive lesser money for the same amount of work. So this is double discrimination faced by women who are Dalits. Firstly, they are discriminated against because they are Dalits. Secondly, they are discriminated against doubly because they are women. So she brings in the idea of double discrimination as well, the double whammy that women particularly had to go through. Then Bama also describes that despite the shortcomings, despite the hardships, despite the humiliations, the members of her community were still very cheerful. They used to live together in harmony, and they used to enjoy with each other, and despite the pains and the tribulations, they were still more or less happy. Now, there's one particular line which I'll be quoting which shows the amount of hardships that Dalits had to go through, and I'm reading it from the book. She says, "For it is only when they fall asleep at night that their arms and legs are still. They seem to be at work all the time, and they have to keep working until the moment of death. It is only in this way that they can even half fill their bellies." So therefore, we see that Dalit community is only barely surviving in this autobiographical and realistic, book Karukku. It is a subsistence living, that they are undergoing, just a hand-to-mouth survival, right? So despite working so hard, they cannot even earn proper meals for their day. So then she even goes on to explain how the young children, they also used to work like adults, and the young children who should have gone to the school, they used to work in the matchbox factory, they used to make firecrackers, they use chemicals. And right, so look at these lines that she says. And she says they work at sticking on matchbox labels, they make firecrackers and use chemicals. At an age when they should be going to school, studying like everyone else and playing around in the evenings, they are shut up inside the factories instead. So you see, it is not just the adults, but the children are also exploited by members of the upper castes, by the powerful people and sections of the society, right? It is completely a dystopic state where, due to the demarcation of castes, people are suffering. Again, look at these lines again, and she says, there are 2 or 3 schools available for the children nowadays, but these little ones' fate is the smell of matchbox solution, not the smell of knowledge or learning. How can they afford to study where it is such a struggle? even to fill their bellies. So we see that the author Bama is not just talking about herself, but her entire community. If you remember my previous lecture, I discussed on the fact that Dalit literature is not written for one individual, it's written for the entire community. Therefore, the novel, this autobiography, Karukku, is not just an autobiography, but it is a social document. We can say so. It is kind of a testimonial, we can say so, which basically testifies the pains and humiliations of an entire community. It is almost a social document rather than just an autobiography, because the author herself is more concerned, you can say, about her entire community. This also reminds us, the point which I have repeatedly mentioned, that Dalit literature is a collective literature. It is not meant for entertainment. It is not meant for one individual, but rather the entire community, and to bring about social changes. Please look at the previous lectures in my playlist, right? So therefore, anyone who writes Dalit literature does not only write about one person, but rather about the entire community of the lower castes. Therefore, this short little excerpt, from the autobiography of Karukku, tells us about the fate of the untouchable. It talks about their subsistence living. They are barely managing to somehow live. It talks about how children are employed in hard labor, dangerous labors. It also talks about the fate of the entire community of Bama. It also talks about how women face marginalization on a much more deeper level than men. So these are some of the major ideas, which I just now described in this excerpt. And towards the end of the excerpt, you can see that there is a cry for the importance of education. She's pitching for the importance of education, education as a means of emancipation. She's giving this idea, and that perhaps education is the only way forward, which the untouchables, which the lower castes can get out, they can use to get out of the clutches of, caste and create their own better future. So basically this excerpt ends here. So therefore, it is not just an autobiography, but you can say a very relevant social document, written by a Dalit writer who has experienced firsthand the pains of being an untouchable, and also very importantly, there is also the idea of Dalit feminism in this autobiography. This is because when Dalit women write autobiographies, they are not just writing about their own story, they are basically testifying. They are writing a testimony of the pains and the hardships, that the women have felt. Firstly, because of being a Dalit, and secondly, because of being a woman. Right. So these are some ideas. So this book Karukku is, as I said, not just an autobiography but a testimonial, and I say so because any autobiography basically talks about an individual, but testimonial goes beyond the individual and the community into the deep history and caste system and the social fabric of the times in which it was written. The novel goes deep into the socio-political structures of the society. If you read the entire book, of course, just one short 2 or 3 page excerpt is being given to you, but I would suggest the readers to read the entire book Karukku. It's a beautifully written autobiography which will open your eyes regarding the way untouchables have faced discrimination. Right now, also one more important point that is there, is that how the author Bama shows what you can say the real life problems that are faced by Dalits. She gives several examples throughout this short excerpt. We can note some of those examples. Firstly, she says that when they used to go to the Naikars were the powerful landowners, the powerful dominant caste in their village, the powerful people, the upper caste. And she mentions how when they used to go to the Naikars, she used to face, and her community members used to face discrimination at their hands. Then she even describes how hard the untouchables used to work day and night, and they used to barely get 2 decent meals a day. Can you imagine that? Right? So these are the everyday problems that they have been facing, and they were not even given the payment. Next, she mentions how they were not even sometimes given the payment which was due to them, that was appropriate for their labor, right? And how life has been extremely unfair because they are born untouchables. Thirdly, she mentions, how the village of Bama was also divided on the basis of caste. So you have the particular segregated areas and clusters where only the upper caste used to live, and the poorly constructed and dilapidated structures and areas which were given and segregated specifically for the lower castes, and life was very difficult there, in the latter part. So and then mostly, or the untouchables used to live on the outskirts, you can say, and they were reduced to the margins. So this again shows the rigid, what you can say, stratifications in a caste based society. Then next she also mentions how the police was always under the control of the upper castes, and all in all, it is basically a society where the rules are dictated by the upper caste, and the community of Bhama has to suffer. The entire community has to suffer day and night, right? And then she also mentions how the discrimination. The fifth point is how it used to happen on a day-to-day basis based on gender, the double discrimination. It is a double whammy for the women. They had to suffer firstly because they are Dalits, and secondly because they are women. So this is the fifth point, how at an everyday, on an everyday basis, these people used to face discriminations. Women were getting lower wages than Dalit men, right? So we as students of literature have to understand, the various forms and insidious manners in which caste pervades our society, and how we need to educate ourselves. And that is why this is prescribed in our syllabus. Then, sixthly, she also mentions how the children used to work in the matchbox factories at a time when they should be in the safe custody of their parents, of their teachers, where they should study. So the entire childhood is ruined, right? Because they are forced to work in extremely dangerous conditions. Even today, if you look at some of the divisions of labor in independent India, you will see that they are all stratified. It's not that the upper castes are doing the extreme, the manhole cleaning. We talk about 21st century modern India, but still there are cases of manhole cleaning. And if you take a survey and if you look around, they are majorly people of the lower castes only who are doing such jobs, not the members of the upper caste. So what I'm trying to say is that this is also a way of judging the fact that somehow even today it might escape our attention, but even caste based discrimination is still going on pretty much today. And so therefore these are some of the ideas that Bama makes here. And so we were on the point where she's describing how the untouchable families were not able to send their children to school because they couldn't even afford to earn 2 meals a day. So how can they imagine to send their children to school? So these are some of the ideas. Also, the narrative of Karukku, this one important point, again a different point, is how the self and the community is brought together by the author Bama Faustina. It is a testimonial. Testimonials are written not just for one individual but for the entire community. Therefore, Dalit literature takes on a more moral and social responsibility of writing for the entire community, not for entertainment, not for one individual, but to bring about a meaningful change in society. So these are some of the major ideas that were discussed in this short little excerpt, and I would sincerely urge the students to just to also read the entire book, entire autobiography, and that is Karukku by Bama. With this, I will end this lecture, and thank you so much for joining in at Hansraj e-Samvaad. I'll see you again very soon, shortly, in another lecture on the next unit, and that is writing in English. I'll be starting the next unit, that is Indian English Literatures and Writing in English, which will be the next unit, and again it is a part of your syllabus. So please stay tuned for that, and I'll see you very soon. Thank you. Goodbye. Jai Hind.